I tried to sleep but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa's terrified face, heard her desperate pleas for her brother. I kept thinking of the containers, the amber fluid, the thrashing inside. The pieces were starting to fit together in my mind, forming a picture too horrifying to believe. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. 7-Eleven on Westfield, 20 minutes. Come alone. Jay. I hopped out of bed, threw on clothes, and raced to my car, checking over my shoulder every few seconds. The parking lot of the convenience store was nearly empty when I arrived. I spotted Jean's sedan parked at the far end, away from the building's security cameras. She sat behind the wheel, sunglasses on despite the overcast day, her hair down for once instead of in its usual bun. I almost didn't recognize her. "Get in," she said when I approached, not bothering with a greeting. I slid into the passenger seat, noticing her bloodshot eyes and the slight tremor in her hands as she gripped the steering wheel. "What happened to Lisa?" I asked immediately. Jean stared straight ahead through the windshield. "You don't want to know?" "I do," I insisted. "Please just tell me." She turned to face me, removing her sunglasses. The dark circles under her eyes seemed deeper than ever. "She's gone. Like her brother. And no, you can't help her, and neither could I." My stomach twisted into knots. "You just let them take her? What the hell are they going to do with her?" "What would you have had me do?" Jean snapped, a rare flash of emotion breaking through her stoic facade. "Fight off Stanton. That man has killed people with his bare hands. Unfortunately, I've seen it." She shook her head, running trembling fingers through her hair. "There are two types of people at PT. Those who follow orders and those who disappear." "What are they doing in there, John?" I whispered. "Those containers, the maintenance period, all of it. What the hell is going on?" Jean was silent for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "The Proud Tailor isn't just a shipping company, and it's definitely not a regular tailor." She turned to look at me, her eyes haunted. "The name is a sick joke. They don't make clothes, or if they do, it's secondary. They make something else." "What?" "I don't know exactly, and I'm only telling you this because I trust you're the only one who would believe me and not tell Matt or anyone else. I saw inside a container. Just once. The lid was ajar. I couldn't help but look. I closed it up before anyone saw, and somehow the security cameras missed my infraction, because I am still here, and still breathing." I couldn't believe it. Jean had seen what it was we were shipping. I knew she was struggling, but I had to ask all the same. "What did you see?" She hesitated and then eventually responded. "It was just a brief glimpse. I still am not completely sure I saw what I saw. But it was enough. Enough to know that we are shipping parts for something, and some of the parts are alive." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Her words hung in the air between us, heavy with implications too terrible to fully process. "Alive?" I whispered. She swallowed hard. "Yes, what I saw was alive, I think. 7 years is a long time. I've picked up bits and pieces, overheard things. The Proud Tailor apparently has facilities all over the country. They ship these parts between locations. Hundreds, maybe thousands of them. When they are done doing whatever they do with them, they move them to the red boxes. I think it is whatever the final product is." "That's insane," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they rang hollow. The containers, the maintenance period, the screams, it all pointed to something unimaginable. "The containers that leaked yesterday," I began, remembering the amber fluid eating through concrete. Something was moving inside, thrashing. Jean nodded grimly. Temperature control is crucial. When they warm up, you start to hear things. She trailed off, shaking her head. That's why cold storage is so important. Keeps whatever is inside dormant. We need to go to the police or FBI or something, I said, reaching for my phone. Jean's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with surprising strength. And tell them what? I can't prove anything. I still don't fully trust my own eyes on what I saw. Never mind the fact that I told you about PT's connections. You mean with the police and that guy Stanton? I muttered, remembering the mountain of a man who'd appeared so quickly. Jean nodded. Ex-military. Now he's security for PT. But that barely scratches the surface of what he does. He has friends in the police department and City Hall. If you went to the authorities, they'd either laugh you out of the building or... She left the rest unsaid. So what? We just keep working there? Keep moving those things? I felt sick at the thought. Keep watching people disappear during maintenance? Jean stared at her hands. I've survived this long by following the rules, by not asking questions, by looking the other way. Her voice caught slightly. I'm not proud of it, but it's kept me alive. There has to be something we can do, I insisted. Some way to expose what's happening. You don't understand, Jean said, her voice dropping to a whisper. The proud tailor has clients, powerful people whose names show up on the delivery lists. If you knew some of the names, you might understand how hopeless this is. She shuddered visibly. It doesn't matter. Just listen. I told you what I saw, but I don't know everything. Forget I said anything except the warning. I don't want your death on my conscience. Please. If you know what's good for you, remember, no one is looking out for you. And if you disappear, it'll be another name on the list of those I couldn't protect. She shoved me out of her car and drove off. I stood there, reeling at what I had just heard. I had no idea what the hell to do about the insanity I was embroiled in. I returned home and did not even try to go back to sleep. I had to think of something. There had to be some way of finding out for sure what was going on and how to stop it. Hours later, I was no closer to a solution, yet the clock ticked ominously closer to the start of my shift. Reluctantly, I forced myself to leave, my mind reeling, as I headed back to that monstrous warehouse of hidden nightmares. When I finally arrived for my shift, I hesitated. Fear and anxiety were choking me, compelling me to turn around and flee. I convinced myself that I would find out what was really going on tonight, one way or another. I would see what was going on, and if there was a way to stop it myself, then I would. I didn't think I could just wait, watch, and move those hideous boxes anymore. I went inside and saw no one else near my station. Jean's car had been in the parking lot, and I knew she had to be there. I grabbed the shipping log and saw that a truck was already in the dock. I decided to try and play out the day like normal and see what I could find out. I figured it might be beneficial that I was alone for the time being. It might give me an opportunity. I got to the loading bay, and I was still alone. The truck sat there, loaded with those ominous black boxes that had haunted my thoughts since I'd first seen them. Everything was eerily quiet. No Jean, no Matt, no one around, just me and those boxes. As I approached the truck, a plan started to take shape in my mind. A part of me screamed to stick to the rules, unload the boxes, put them on ice, and walk away. It was the safe path, the one that ensured survival. Yet, I hesitated. Jean's words echoed in my mind, as well as the thought of Lisa and her brother vanishing. I was torn, caught between the safety of protocol and the urgency of what I knew deep down needed to be done. I quickly inspected the ceiling, locating the security cameras. There was a blind spot near the back corner of the warehouse where the loading dock met the cold storage area. If I could move one container there, my plan might work. I grabbed a dolly and approached the truck. My hands trembled as I maneuvered the closest container onto it. The digital display read -18 degrees Celsius, a proper temperature according to protocol. Whatever was inside would be fully dormant. The container felt impossibly heavy as I wheeled it slowly toward the camera blind spot, my eyes constantly darting around for any sign of movement. The corner was dimly lit, shrouded in shadows cast by tall shelving units. I positioned the container against the wall and stared at it, my breath coming in shallow gasps. This was it, the moment of truth. My fingers hovered over the container's edge, searching for any gaps. There had to be a way to open it without triggering an alarm. I examined the seams carefully, noticing a series of recessed latches along one side. The container's surface was unnervingly cold, frost forming around my fingertips where they touched the metal. I held my breath and released the first latch. It clicked open with surprising ease. The second followed, then the third. With each one I expected sirens, shouts, Stanton's massive form appearing from the shadows. But there was only silence. The final latch gave way, and the lid rose slightly, a wisp of frigid vapor escaping into the air. I hesitated, Jean's warnings echoing in my mind. Once I looked inside, there would be no going back. Knowledge was dangerous at PT shipping. I held my breath and lifted the lid. The stench hit me first, chemical and organic, like a hospital morgue. The container was filled almost to the brim with that same amber fluid I'd seen leaking before. Only now it was almost frozen solid, like some grotesque amber-colored ice cube. And suspended within it, perfectly preserved, was what appeared to be a person. At least, it looked like a person. The face was intact, a man, maybe 40, his features frozen in an expression of terror. But below the neck, things became wrong. The right arm ended at the elbow, replaced by what looked like a hollow cast or shell for something else. The surface had been seamlessly fused to the flesh, with intricate patterns etched into the metal that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. The chest had been partially hollowed out, filled with a network of tubes and mechanical components I couldn't begin to identify. Where the lower body should have been, a framework of metal and a lattice of what looked like porcelain and plaster extended downward, forming a grotesque approximation of human legs. I recoiled in horror, nearly dropping the lid. This was beyond anything I could have imagined. Not just transportation of bodies, but bodies that had been mutilated. I remembered what Jean had said about how they shipped parts, and how some of them were alive, and they put things together and sent them off in the red boxes. If this was a part, just what the hell would the final product be? As I stared in morbid fascination, the eyes suddenly snapped open. I stumbled backward, crashing into the shelving behind me. Blue eyes, unmistakably human, stared out from that frozen face. The amber fluid remained solid, yet somehow those eyes moved, tracking me as I scrambled away. The mouth of the person opened, but no sound came out. It was like someone trying to scream underwater. The sight was horrible, and the lucidity in their eyes was nightmarish. They were aware of what was happening at that moment. I slammed the lid shut, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The latches clicked back into place one by one, each sound like a gunshot in the silent warehouse. I backed away from the container, bile rising in my throat. That person was conscious, trapped in that frozen coffin while their body was being transported for God knows what horrible transformation. I staggered back, horrified and frozen in fear. My terrified stupor broke when I heard the intercom flare to life. "New guy, I hope you are finishing up with that truck in Bay B. We have a special shipment inbound in Bay C. Get over there as soon as you are done." Matt's voice died down on the intercom, and I knew I had to move quickly. I wheeled the containers into cold storage, my mind still reeling from what I'd seen. The frigid air bit at my exposed skin as I navigated through the maze of shelving units, each one holding dozens of identical black boxes. How many people were trapped inside? How many were still conscious, aware of their fate? As I pushed deeper into the storage area, trying to find space for the final container, I noticed a section I hadn't seen before. A heavy chain-link partition separated it from the main storage area, with a sign that read, "Authorized security personnel only." My breath caught in my throat. Through the frosty air, I could make out rows of containers that looked slightly different from the others, their surfaces marred with warning labels and red tags. I knew I shouldn't go closer. Every instinct screamed to turn around, to forget what I'd seen. But something pulled me forward, past the unlocked gate, and into the restricted section. I looked for cameras and did not see any in there and moved further in. The temperature dropped even further here, cold enough that my breath formed crystals in the air. The first few containers were sealed tight, identical to the others except for their red tags. But the last one in the row was different. The lid was slightly ajar, as if someone had closed it in haste. And from the narrow gap, a human hand protruded, frozen in a desperate reaching gesture. I approached slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. The hand was feminine, with chipped black nail polish and around the wrist, a familiar dragon tattoo. My heart sank. I recognized that tattoo immediately. I grasped the edge of the container's lid and pulled it open wider. The hydraulic hinges resisted at first, then gave way with a soft hiss of escaping gas. More of that amber fluid glistened inside, partially crystallized but not completely frozen. And there she was, Lisa, the woman who had held me at gunpoint just hours ago, now suspended in the viscous amber. Her eyes were closed, her face peaceful in a way that seemed cruelly deceptive given the circumstances. Unlike the previous container I'd opened, her body appeared untouched. No mechanical additions or surgical alterations. Yet. A label affixed to the inside of the lid caught my attention. Dissident, processing pending, priority alpha. My stomach lurched as the full implications hit me. This wasn't just some evil operation shipping body parts. They were actively capturing people who caused trouble, who asked questions, who came looking for missing loved ones. And they were turning them into something horrible. As I stared down at Lisa's frozen form, her eyes suddenly snapped open just like the other one had. Recognition flickered in their depths, followed by naked terror. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, trapped within the semi-solid amber. She was alive. I needed to get her out. I reached for her, but the amber liquid had frozen enough where I could not just pull her out. As I searched for something to break it, I panicked when I heard Matt's annoyed voice by the cold storage entrance. "What's taking so long? We need to get to Base C for a priority shipment. Is everything all right in here?" I stole a final glance at Lisa's pleading eyes and stepped away, unable to help without risking our lives. I had to leave her for now to focus on the priority shipment. I exited the secure section, pretending to put away a black box when Matt noticed me. "There you are. We need to move quickly. Drop what you're doing and come on, you can finish it later." I nodded and followed. Matt seemed oddly nervous, and it felt like there was something he was not telling me. I looked back at cold storage once and grimaced, then followed Matt to the loading bay where the priority shipment awaited. When I arrived, Matt was already waiting with Jean. Both of them were standing stiffly and focused on the truck at the platform. This truck was unlike any other. It was adorned with intricate details that set it apart. The trim gleamed more brightly against the deep black paint, catching the light and casting a sharp contrast. An unusually elaborate decal graced its side, a delicate pattern that resembled fine filigree, swirling elegantly and adding a touch of sophistication to the otherwise industrial vehicle. "You're late," Matt muttered without turning his head. "Sorry." "Just get in position," he interrupted, pointing to a spot on the opposite side of the dock from Jean. "This is a special delivery. Category red." I remembered the implications of the red containers and nearly froze. I had seen some on other trucks, and I wondered what was so special about this one. I glanced at Jean, whose face had gone completely expressionless, though I noticed her knuckles were white where she gripped her clipboard. "What do I need to?" I began. "Stand there. Don't speak. Don't touch anything unless I tell you to," Matt finished, his tone leaving no room for argument. The driver's door of the truck opened, and a figure stepped out. At first, I thought it was a man in an unusually formal suit, but as he approached, I realized this was no ordinary delivery driver. He stood well over 6 feet tall, gaunt to the point of emaciation, with pale skin stretched too tightly over sharp cheekbones. His movements were precise, almost mechanical, and his expensive-looking suit hung on his frame like it was tailored for someone with more flesh. "Mr. Jaspin," Matt said, his voice suddenly formal. "We weren't expecting you personally tonight." The tall man's lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Circumstances required my presence, Matthew." His voice was cultured, smooth as silk, but with an underlying quality that made my skin crawl. "This particular shipment is of exceptional importance." He turned his gaze on me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray that seemed to shift like mercury under the harsh dock lights. "And who might this be?" he asked, examining me with the clinical detachment of a scientist studying a specimen. "The new handler," Matt replied tersely. "Started this week." "I see." Mr. Jaspin approached me, his footsteps making no sound at all. He extended a hand that looked too long, the fingers too thin. "Henry Jaspin, proprietor of the Proud Tailor." As I shook his hand, I noticed his skin was cool and dry, almost like touching fine-grained leather rather than human flesh. Instinctively, I told him my name, regretting it instantly when I saw Jean's eyes widen slightly in alarm. Something told me giving this man my real name was a mistake. He smiled and spoke again. "Pleasure to meet you, good sir. I do hope you'll be more durable than your predecessor." Before I could respond, Mr. Jaspin turned sharply and strode to the back of the truck. He produced a small silver key from his pocket and inserted it into what looked like a standard padlock. But when he turned it, the entire rear section of the truck seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from pavement. "Matthew, if you would assist me," he called, gesturing with one elongated finger. Matt immediately moved to help, leaving Jean and me standing awkwardly at the loading dock. The rear doors of the truck swung open silently, revealing a cargo area that seemed impossibly deep given the dimensions of the vehicle. Inside was a single container, larger than any I'd seen before. Unlike the black boxes we'd processed earlier, this one was a deep crimson color, with intricate gold filigree etched across its surface. It looked more like an antique chest than a shipping container. Matt and Mr. Jaspin carefully maneuvered the container onto the loading dock. It moved with surprising lightness for its size, as if whatever was inside weighed almost nothing. Once it was off the truck, Matt leaned in and whispered something to Mr. Jaspin. He nodded his head and looked back at us. I felt Jean's elbow dig sharply into my ribs, snapping me back to awareness. I realized I'd been staring. I quickly composed myself and adopted what I hoped was a neutral expression. But it was too late. Mr. Jaspin had noticed. "Fascinating, isn't it?" he said, his voice like velvet wrapped around a blade. "One of my finest works in progress. Would you like a sneak peek?" I swallowed hard, unable to look away from the container. The strange buzzing sound was audible now, and it nearly overwhelmed me. "No, I shouldn't. We are not allowed to look in the boxes," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I expected. Mr. Jaspin's smile widened, revealing teeth that were too white, too perfect. "Indeed. I see you were trained well. But in this case, we can make an exception. After all, Matthew might be in charge here, but I am in charge of Matthew. So please, indulge me." He laughed a harsh and brittle chuckle that made me wince. Matt looked on, grinding his teeth while looking deeply uncomfortable. Now, come. You will see that each piece is unique. Custom-tailored, you might say." He ran one long finger along the edge of the container. "This particular model requires special handling. It will reside in our secure storage until completion." Matt cleared his throat. "I'll take it to the secure cold storage unit myself, sir." "No," Mr. Jaspin said sharply, his eyes never leaving my face. "I believe our new hire should assist me. A learning opportunity. Wouldn't you agree?" I felt Jean tense beside me, though her expression remained neutral. Matt's face darkened with what might have been concern, but he nodded stiffly. "Of course, sir. However you prefer to handle this." Mr. Jaspin gestured for me to take the other end of the cart. "Shall we? The night grows old, and we must away to the workshop." With no reasonable way to refuse, I moved to the cart and helped guide it as Mr. Jaspin led us deeper into the warehouse, toward the special storage area and whatever terrible revelations lay in wait. Thanks for watching Shadow Voices. New creepy stories uploaded every day. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss tomorrow's nightmare. Got your own story? Submit it using the link in the description. See you in the shadows.